Welcome to the
What's up, everyone?
Podcast with your host, Herschel Fawn.
Kind of ready to get into this. It's been a pretty interesting week. With all the games that have been on. I'd like to first say thank you to the Queen for letting us have a day off on your birthday, even though it's not this weekend. And have another 20 years of life so you can live to be 115 or whatever it is. But let's get into this. I have had a look over the rankings. I've thought about a lot of the upsets that have been this week, and I know that a lot of you guys are asking in terms of rankings how it's going to fall, and who's going to drop, who's going to well, let me ask. Okay, I'll answer the question that everyone's kind of been asking me, and then because the main question that comes up is who's upset, because there's been so many upsets this weekend or this past week. People have been asking whose upset was the worst. Now we have the Christ College versus Christchurch boys upset. We have the St. Peter's over St. Paul's upset. We have the Marlborough over Nelson upset. We have the Silverstream over New Plymouth upset. I would say the Manurewa losing to Whangarei boys a bit of an upset. And I would say the Orewa beating Takapuna Grammar maybe the best win in a way. And I think that's one of the bigger ones to sort of take notice of is the Ottawa win over Takapuna Grammar, where they won 22-21. But going back to the question of like whose upset was the worst, the one to me was the St. Paul's losing to St. Peter's was the worst. And the reason why it was the worst, and it's it has to do with the game plan and the way that St. Peter's shut down St. Paul's. Because, like, if you watch the game, St. Paul's started off pretty much the first 15 minutes basically attacking. And that's what they do. And it kind of went to script because that's what St. Paul's do. They will suffocate you a lot in terms of playing hard defense, because you got Lincoln Winter and you got Nia Church and Nia Church Jones. And so, like, those two alone, in terms of just defense in the forward pack, are the main guys that you kind of want to isolate and to maybe get out of there. Maybe, was it Tom Kame as well, is probably the other one that I really like on defense. And then Malachi Rampling, who's the other guy, the number 8, who to me is one of the best number 8s in the country right now. He was taken off his normal game plan that he has. Like everybody there right now that has played St. Paul's Collegiate, hit me up and let me know if I'm right or not. But I bet you if when you guys played against St. Paul's this year, everyone that's played against them, or if you've seen them play, Malachi is going to break your line at least 3 times, and he will score a try or 2 or set up a try or 2. And he would do it from anywhere on the park. Now, I saw Jonty Short make some big tackles on him. The number 8, Andrew Smith, who's one of the best locks in the country right now from St. Peter's, he had a big play in that as well. Harry Boyle was the other guy that I really liked in that game, in the way that in terms of defense. And even though they were attacking in those first 15 minutes, where you'd usually see St. Paul's get points off that, they didn't. And St. Peter's pretty much brought them in, and for that 15 to 20 minutes where St. Paul's had that control, St. Peter's just lapped it all up and just played defense. And they tackled well, they tried to get out, they... when it wasn't successful, they just carried on, held to their game plan in terms of their defense, and then they just tackled all day. And they stopped everything. They stopped everything that was coming within that first 15 to 20 minutes that St. Paul's had control. To me, that is where St. Peter's really stamped the authority on that game. It was that first 15 to 20 minutes of dominance from St. Paul's, and St. Peter's just took everything, and they stopped them at every spot, and then they were the first ones to score a try, and then they would stop them, then they slowly moved them back, then slowly moved them back, then went back in, then they slowly moved them back again, and then all of a sudden they were on St. Paul's lines coming towards the end of that first half, and then that's when Andrew scored his try. And then I think it was Jaden missed his kick on halftime that would have made it 5-3. And to me, missing those points was important too, to get them on the board and to sort of get that feeling of something that pays off. That was one thing that I thought was a big miss for them too. And then that start of that second half as well just wasn't going their way. I felt that because Anadu had such a good game. I think Jane Brimfield was the other one that they missed a lot in terms of his activity in that back line. And I don't know, because he didn't play a good game like we're used to seeing him play, because he's really good for that team and in that team and the way that they use him. He's to me, he's that connection between the wingers and making some of those breaks. Then he gets it back inside to Anadu sometimes, who will play close to him and who will sort of give him that space to play outside shoulder of his defender, and then Anadu will come back on the inside shoulder and then hopefully get that pop-off pass if wingers have pulled up and he's the one coming on the inside. Anadu always does stuff like that because and it works out because of how physical he is. He will get his defender away from him on that first play, back it up on the second play, and be that next guy that takes the ball. And Jay's really good at that, and I didn't see that from him in that St. Peter's game. And to be fair to him, they didn't set that up properly from the base of the clean ball that they're usually used to getting. And a lot of that is based off Malachi making breaks, and then there's that quick ball, then Anadu will take it after that. And it kind of works that way in the way that they play. And St. Paul's have played that way from the beginning, and it's worked, and this is the first time I've ever seen it not work. This is kind of why I see this loss as the worst one. Not because it's a top 5 team, ranked losing team, because there's not that much difference in that ranking anyway, from number 5 playing number 10 in the country. That's not that much of a difference in terms of scoreline, right? And there's usually only like a point or a point and a half or maybe two between one team to the next team. And having it 26-0, and sort of the way that they scored their points was also that too. Like, I give it up to Cash Farmer, I give it up to Dawson Smith, even Cody Vai had a really good game. Or what's his name, year 11 at the back. This was the first time I've ever really seen him play a full game, the Napier kid. As year 11, he'll probably end up on that top 60 year 11 rankings coming up on Tuesday or Wednesday. And it was more about how those guys shifted it. And those guys moved the ball when they got the ball. I put it on their defense first, and they shut everything down, and they made sure all those opportunities weren't there that are usually there. And then they did their thing when it came to the offensive side, and they started pushing. And then, and 26-0 was a lot of points, even though the way that it came was kind of slow. But St. Peter's really did break them down slowly, I feel, anyway. The second team is going to be the Nelson one. And the reason why that's second and not like the first one, like that's not the biggest upset, is that is because St. Peter's took them way out of their game. Now, from what I've seen of the Nelson one, is that all the highlights that I've seen of it, which is about, I guess, 15 minutes, almost 20 minutes of the game, and stuff like that, and what I've read about it and what people have reported back, is that Nelson was not Nelson. Nelson just didn't play good, but they played really bad, but kept it within range of Marlborough. And the people that I was talking to and the stuff that I've seen, Marlborough should have won this game maybe by about a try more. And this was their kind of game to lose. Now, Nelson have a roster that shouldn't have lost this game. And they're coming off a draw from the last week, which makes it even worse. Because I hope this is not a downfall of that team. I hope this is not a slow release of water out of the drain or a leaky tap of confidence for this team, because they're such a good roster team. They're such an old, experienced team that have a lot of good players, that have a lot of leadership, and they have a lot of structure within themselves as a team, that they should not lose to anybody in their competition. In their comp, they shouldn't lose to anybody based off the fact that they have strong leadership, an experienced team, and I think they have the X Factor guys too. And the way that they lost was sad as well. Where it kind of summed up that game for them. That it was on the outside, man. It was on the outside edge, and it was just a pass caught, and he just ran 45, 50 meters or whatever it was down the sideline at Nelson on their home field. And man, that must have been painful. And Nelson need to get over this one pretty quickly. And it's funny too, because like Nelson have to get over it quickly. Marlborough needs to hold that feeling and just take that feeling in with them to the next game and for the rest of the year, and with every ounce of confidence that they have in themselves, say this is the team that beat a top 10 team in the country and who is supposed to be the best South Island team as well. I hope that they take that confidence with them. And like, this is what it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be like, right? Is that, yeah, I put rankings on them, but I'm not saying that this is definite. That's why they change weekly. This is the reason why they change weekly, because the old high school kids that we were watching, These aren't like professionals that we know what they're like. We already know, like, we know what Brody Retallick's going to bring back to the Chiefs. We know what Adi Xavier is going to be like when he gets back from when he's back from injury. We know what Sam Whitelock brings every time he steps on the field, and we know what the Crusaders are. High school kids is not the same thing at all. At all. You watch when the ball comes around. I guarantee most of those teams that have a ball that night or the night before, they're losing the next day. Because kids don't know this kind of stuff. But that's, to me, what makes it interesting. Is that we don't know what these kids are. They've not really established themselves as something yet. They're all still growing talent. Regardless of where I rank them, they're all still growing talent regardless. I may not even rank teams or players on my top 200 list, then they'll probably make under 20s the next year. Because I don't decide that stuff. I just see what I see and I put my opinion out and I place a number next to it. Now, if they grow and then they just finally click when they leave school and be like, oh, club rugby is like this. Oh, yeah, I know how to play this. This feels good. Then they make the under 20s. It's like, yeah, good on you. And they should say, Herschel, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, cool, that's fine. Prove me wrong. That's fine. I like it. You made under 20s, cool. And there's some guys that have done that they've made under 20s that weren't ranked or that weren't really thought about or that were just okay players, even on their team. They weren't the best players on their team, and then all of a sudden it just took them a summer to go, oh, this is what rugby is about, and then they just figured it out. And that's the same thing of what Marlborough boys did at Nelson, is that they just figured it out. Nelson may have played pretty bad, but they still got the win out. That's what you're supposed to get. And then you're supposed to take that feeling, hold that feeling, and take it through to your next game, whoever Melbourne's going to be playing next, which I haven't talked about, but we'll talk about that later as well. So that will probably be the second one. The third one, in terms of the worst loss, is New Plymouth boys and the way that they had nothing going. And it's hard to see a team like that have nothing going. And Shea, just like Malachi, did not have a good game. Was not given the opportunities, was not finding those extra gaps, and it just wasn't the same New Plymouth team that I've seen a few times this year already. And they need to figure it out, and Silverstream just figured that out. Emmanuel Solomon was probably the best player in that game, and to me it was about his timing was what it was. His timing and patience for things to develop, to not rush so much in terms of to get the ball away, or even, and I think this is where like the confidence, and I think the confidence in yourself that you're just like, oh, I'm not scared if you hit me. I'm just going to wait for this play to develop and wait for my mans to get into the right spot, and then I'm going to give that pass. I'll still give the pass, and you can hit me as hard as you want. And Emmanuel was just like that. He just made everything work, waited for everything, was patient as, and then some of those passes were just on point, and they were just down the line. And then Lucky Kobe Joe was the way that he was running his lines, he was just getting hit every single time, and Tony was right there too, and it was just so cool to watch. Like I thought it was so good, the way that Stream played. Even like Keanu was like at halfback was also just his delivery was just smooth in the flow of the game, and on the other side of it was just a rush and just some patience to build phases, and then patience to wait for those opportunities and just play a simple game first. It was kind of like they were just trying to push everything, and Shea just didn't have his game, and Peter wasn't really on his game either. Samuel out in the backs, Vakadula was the same, and I just wish that, I don't know, is it the moment for some of you boys that when there is a TV around that you feel that pressure of the TV being there? and the moment being too much? Like, is that something that you fellas struggle with? And is it a real thing that you struggle with? Because it's the same thing with St. Paul's and New Plymouth. They were just off their game. It just wasn't the game that they were playing, that they used to playing. And so, it was strange to see both of these teams in those situations that got them a bit caught up in the wrong things, I guess. Caught up in the momentum falling away from their team, and so like it was kind of sad to watch in a way, just because I'm fans of teams that I'm just fans of teams that play their game, right? Like, I'm happy for St. Peter's and sad for St. Paul's at the same time. St. Peter's because they obviously worked on something that they wanted to implement on the day, and it just worked out. I mean, I watched it with St. John's as well, where St. John's had Wesley College just, I think it was 24 minutes of constant pressure, and then Wesley couldn't even barely could get out of their 22 for 24 minutes. That's how bad it was, and how much St. John's College, Hamilton, was just pounding them, like just constant wave after wave of runners. And then they finally scored. Wesley kicked off on the opposite side, away from their forwards, and then the flipping winger grabbed it, ran a couple of lines, step, passed it off to Monty, I think, and then Monty was the one, and just did a swerve, stepped off his right inside, and then scored. And this was straight after 24 minutes of constant waves and pressure from St. John's, and then Wesley just, deflated that in a kickoff of a matter of like 7 seconds it took from that kickoff to go all the way to the next try. And I was still flipping, writing my thing and, trying to post up, the try that just happened, to me thinking, I was just like, oh, it's all right, I'll catch the next whistle stop. And then he scores a try. I was like, oh, bloody hell. So it was like one of those that happened so fast, and the momentum of it changed the game so much, because I think if St. John's scored that try and then held on to that position again and took it back down, they would have scored again before halftime and would have made it something like 12-0 at halftime, where it ended up being 5-7 or something like that. And then St. John's took ages again building up these phases, and it took right to the end of the second half for St. John's to really just start ripping away from Wesley. But Wesley, with that young-ass team that they have now, they kept it together. They really kept St. John's compact and tight within the pressure of the game, when it shouldn't have been like that. It should have been just St. John's just flowing through all these points, and Wesley did their job and held them for most of that game. And then I guess the lack of experience and the young players that are part of that Wesley team just couldn't hold on anymore. But Wesley's going to be a problem next year with so many of their guys coming back, and I feel like Leslie Vanakoalo and his staff, with like Chris Bean and Chris Fields, I think. Sorry, bro, if I got your name wrong. I feel like they're building something, and Leslie Vanakoalo is doing something right with those boys, that they're starting to believe in that team again, and in that program, and in that school. And this is how I feel about Wesley, because I love Wesley so much. I love and hate Wesley for the same reason that they were our traditionals, and we didn't like them when we were at school, and that's our traditional. We played them, but we had a lot of respect for them. Wesley have this thing about them that back in the days, everyone feared Wesley when they came. Everyone had this weary thing of like Wesley and who they were. And we were the same at Church College. We were just like, we didn't fear them, but we knew that this game was going to take everything that we had, and if they were going to punch us, we'll punch them back. And we were that way. Right now, everyone respects Wesley, but they don't fear them. That fear, to me, of Wesley has gone. And they need to start getting some of those South Auckland boys to go back to Wesley, and alumni sons to go back to Wesley and stuff like that, to build back what they used to be like. And if you used to be a first 15 player at Wesley, and you have sons that are teenagers, and you want to rebuild that, I think you should send your some sons back to Wesley, because this is just me speaking of what I see and what I've seen for the last few years now. Wesley is a team that is respected, and because of the traditions that they have, but they're not feared as a team. And they need to put that fear back into everybody. Leslie Vanakola right now is, to me, setting that up with the players that they have, and the program that they have set for some of those boys coming through. And yesterday I saw it, and I saw the confidence in what that team can do, and I'm pretty keen to see what they're going to be like come end of the year and then the start of next year, which is going to be really cool to see. The other thing that it's my sister. The other thing that I wanted to talk about as well is that, like, with some of these upsets, is that, like, even the Christ one, like, people ask me about the Christ and Christchurch boys. Christ's is not really, to me, it's not really like an upset, because Christ's have that team that will be able to win games like that. And the way that Christ's played, I think that they can beat Nelson. To me, the most feared teams now, in my mind, is St. Bede's and Timaru. Timaru is probably one of the ones that people don't think about so much, but they're probably a team that you could be feared as well. Stack, even though Stack has got that caliber of players, because they got Torian and Will. Torian and Will and Lino is the other one that you probably don't really want to mess around with too much, because they can change the game. But at the same time, where they got Tane down there, they got Bede, they've got what's his name, Finley, and David is the other one down. Who was the other guy that I really liked? There was another guy on that Timaru team who I really like, but those guys have something going for them, and I think they're building that. And the way that it looks now is that St. Bede's and Timaru could be a final, because I think those two are playing the in-form right now. And if they keep building on some of these wins, even St. Thomas is after their winning ways, losing to Stack yesterday on Saturday. I don't know. I think St. Thomas is going to get found out a little bit from now on. And if they have a run of big teams in a row, it's not going to be good. I think it would be better for them if they had a hard team, and then an easier team, then a hard team, then an easier team, sort of just to be able to play with that confidence to bring it up. And I think St. Thomas is one of those teams that the more confident they get, the harder it's just going to keep harder to beat them as games go on. Even if they played the bigger teams, it's going to be that same way. And I think if St. Thomas have an easier game and they run up the score on somebody, whoever that game is going to be next, you're going to have to watch out, because St. Thomas will take that through. And that, to me, they're a confidence team. And if that team stays confident, then you're going to have a problem with those guys when you come up against them. But that Christ and Christchurch boys was such an entertaining game, and I want to give mad props out to that Christchurch boys media group and what you guys did, and your production that you guys did as well. I thought it was so cool. I thought you guys did such a cool job and a mean job, and I would watch you fellas every single Saturday if you guys do this every single Saturday. And if there's anyone out there that anyone that owns a company and is trying to help out some of these boys, that would probably that want to give money to help them out, like sponsor their games. Like, someone go out and sponsor their games and help them do it again. And this is my thing to any school that wants to put out their own production, which I think you guys should be doing anyway, is that put out your own live production, put out your own commentary, put out your own production, your producers, your cameramen, all of that stuff. I wish you kids would do it yourself. And all you guys that want to get into this kind of stuff, just go out there and make it work. Sacrifice your Saturdays and get into that kind of stuff, because the way that the world is going now is just like you can make up your own networks if you fellas want to. Practice in school. Practice with school stuff. Take advantage of all the equipment that you've got for free, and take advantage and then just use all this stuff to practice on, that once you hit university, you're just like, I know how to use all this stuff. I wrecked it all for the schools when I was trying to figure stuff out. You do all that stuff, man. Any other school that wants to jump in and did exactly what what Christchurch Boys did, I would love to watch that stuff, and I would share your guys' stuff and promote it as much as I can too, because, I mean, why not? They did a great job. You Christchurch Boys fellas they're all part of that whole media class that did that. You guys are so good. You guys are the best, and I really love what you guys did and how you guys portrayed that game. And you commentators, it was funny to hear your guys' lines, and I guess I honestly just wanted to hear you guys talk. I wanted to hear you guys talk about your guys' team, your guys' classmates, the guys that you know, and just wanted to hear what you guys actually wanted to say. I thought that would have been more interesting. And I know you guys are just trying to mimic what, the great Ken Laban and Willie Lossie and that kind of guys, those guys kind of say, but I want to hear what you guys want to say. I want to hear the way that you guys want to say it, and your style of things. That would have been real cool, because I enjoyed what you guys were doing too. I just felt that there was stuff that you guys were holding back on saying, where I think that would have been really cool if you guys just let it fly. But that game was so interesting. Hendricks to me has got to be one of the up-and-coming guys in that hooker. I know that he played number 8, but in that hooker, him and Jack Jones, at tight head probably are the two that I like. I still like Jaden Sarr. Johnny Lee is the other one I still like. Nick Shearer coming back from injury. In all honesty, it still looks like he's trying to come back from injury. But you see the sparks in there, so I kind of like that. I kind of like the way that Nick was, and seeing his spark come back. And he's been such a dangerous player for the last few years that I was hoping he would come back, sort of fresh and healthy and ready to go, because he's such an exciting player to watch. Having James White at fullback for Christchurch Boys was a cool move. I really like that. They've got to start working something. I don't know how. Because Isaac Francis, him and Jackson Meacham, and just in that loose trio. And that type 5, they've got to get some firepower out of that somewhere. And that defense and scramble defense around the park was cool and it was great. And it's for both teams too, because both teams went to sleep after really good moments. And then that's where tries came from. It's just those moments of switching off after good plays. And it's one of those things where that intensity side of it is that you don't want to ride that adrenaline of intensity, that you want to sort of come down and sort of rest from it. It's like sometimes you boys just need to hold on to that energy and just ride it all the way out for that 70 minutes. And I know I'm talking from a point of an older person that knows what experience is in terms of things, but that's what you guys are learning right now. And I guess this is where your ground is to learn that kind of stuff. But that's what it's supposed to be. Don't rest from those really high moments. Drag it out as long as you can, and then find that place in the game where you can lift that up a little bit more and just push the intensity of what you're doing. And so that's where I found all those tries coming from, is when the high intensity areas, and then it's just that little lapse of going to sleep is where those tries were coming in. And but all in all, it was such a good game. It was such a good game to watch from both sides. But what was the other one? Yeah, those were probably the other games that I was thinking about, because I mean, one of the other games that they were talking about was that Manurewa and Whangarei one. The Manurewa one is strange, right? Because they have such a good team, and they seem to perform. Manurewa seem to perform. I've seen them once live, and I've seen them twice on film, but it's like they perform from whistle to whistle. It's not even from like one game to the next game. It's like whistle to whistle, and they have so many good players in that Manurewa team, and it's kind of confusing. It's confusing and frustrating, and I mean frustrating in the way that, from my point of view of the players that I know about, I just want them to hurry up and put it together now, and to see how good they actually are, because they've got so many good players that I just want them to put it together. That's kind of the feeling that I have, and I want them to hurry up and do it. But I understand the process of them having to figure it out themselves, and their coach is probably feeling the same as me, where they're probably thinking we should be running over a lot of these teams, but we're not, and it's not even the other team. I think it's Manurewa players themselves. I think Manurewa have a team that should be teetering on that top 25 in the country. The makeup of their team from forwards to backs, they have that in their team. And it's just not working out. And they got to figure out that problem, what it is. Because they have such a talented roster. They have a more talented roster than a lot of the teams that are ranked before them. Their roster is in themselves. Their roster, in terms of talent, should be a top 25 team. Should be. Not is, but should be. Now, having a roster is one thing, but then putting it together and putting it into action and winning games is the other side of it. You don't win on rosters. You win on the scoreboard and whatever the final whistle is. Whatever that reads, that's how you win it. Have the best team and best names all you want. You still got to always put it together, and that's where the rankings come into it, and making sure that it's staying honest and true to that sort of up and down in terms of rankings. And the way that it is right now, in terms of rankings, is that, and this is how everybody else is sort of going to look at it too, is that, well, let's look at some of these upsets, right? So St. Paul's, you got to look at everybody that St. Paul's has beaten, and beaten and by how much, and then you look at someone like St. Peter's, and then everyone that they have beaten as well. And then you sort of look at, like, well, if those are the margins of those wins to what the win that they have against the higher ranked team, how much would they fall and how much would they go up? Now, because one is 5 and one is 6, or one is 5 and one is 10, and St. Paul's is 5th, St. Peter's is 10th. This is St. Paul's second loss, because they lost to Hamilton Boys in their first game of the season from when ranking started. Their record is going to read something like 3-2, and then for St. Peter's it's going to read 4-0, which should be 5, because they were supposed to play Wesley last week, but then that didn't happen. They shifted the game, and so whenever that game comes, it comes. But then you start looking at the wins and losses and the teams that they've played and won and lost, and then the margins of it too. Now, that's also going to sort of count towards the Hamilton boys side, because you're going, well, Hamilton boys beat St. Paul's by this much, and they've beaten Auckland Grammar by this much, and all these other teams as well that come into it too. And then you go, okay, so if they've beaten them by this much and those guys have beaten them, how much does that fall down and then the other ones jump up? It's the same thing that's going to happen with Nelson College. They drew last week, they lost this week, and then you look at the teams that Marlborough has beaten and lost to at the same time and say, okay, now where does that all fit into it? Where does that fit into it? Because if Marlborough's lost games to these teams, how does Nelson fit into that? How does Nelson also match up if it becomes a triangle of wins and losses? Where does that all go to? How do you sum that all up? Because that's kind of what you're looking at when it comes to rankings. You'll be like, well, if it was a bad game by Nelson, do we look at someone's score like Mid-Canterbury and go, well, they beat him, Nelson beat him by this much, and then Marlborough beat him by this much, and then Marlborough lost to someone like St. Thomas, who I think they lost to as well, and then say, well, they've beaten, and you kind of look at it that way and go, okay, well, this is kind of how far you want to drop them down. The interesting one is going to be the New Plymouth one, and how far they drop down, and then how high Silverstream go. And I think everyone's got to remember that Silverstream has beaten Palmy and New Plymouth, 2 Super 8 teams. And you've got to look at it in a way too that you think, okay, well, if that's the case, then how good are Silverstream really? They're going to jump up the rankings from number 18. Does that mean that they're a top 12 team? Should they move up, the extra 6 spots? Do they jump ahead of New Plymouth, or do they jump equally to, where New Plymouth becomes like an 11 and Silverstream is a 12 or 13? Like, where do those things cross? Because you don't want to move someone up too much that then they lose the next week and then you drop them all the way back again. Because then you're not really giving an accurate reading of how good this team is. Because this is how I explain it to people too. It's like, well, just because Nelson lost to Marlborough boys doesn't mean they switch positions and where they are ranked into the country, because people have bad games. And consistency is always what brings through your rankings, not just your win and you just swap spaces. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. It would never work like that. And because you just won't get the true meaning of where a team lies and falls. And so that's kind of what you're looking at now. That even the placement of Christ is like, well, now you've got to argue, well, Christ deserved to be there. They deserve to be in that top 25. And I could argue too is that, well, because Christ has beaten Christchurch Boys, who's 21, does that mean Christchurch Boys falls out of the top 25 and Christ moves into the top 25? And how far do they move in? Because remember, Otago Boys, who was sitting at like 24 or 23, they lost to Southland Boys, who was sitting at something like 17th, 18th or something like that. And then them being on the same island and within that same realm of, we were at some point play each other. How far in and how far back do those two fall? Because remember, they have their traditional too, Otago Boys and Christ, which is going to be a big one. I hope that's a TV game, because that's going to be a mean game. And you still have to think about the John McGlashan thing too. them beating Southland Boys, it does mean something on both sides of the win and loss column. But then how much? How far back? And the thing is that for you guys there to think about too, is that like when you look at it too, you still got to look at the fact that even though you're playing as an individual, you're still playing as your competition too, and you're representing how strong your competition is. So like if let's say that all those Highlander teams that have traditional crossovers with that Miles Toyota competition, the Christchurch one, all those crossover teams, if all those Highlander teams won and won every single tradition that they have with the Christchurch teams, then we're pushing your guys' competition back. You no longer have that spot anymore. And then you have to kind of think about it, well, okay, it's better coming from those 4 top teams from the Otago Highlanders and it's going, well, if Otago, Southland, Kings High School and John McGlashan are all winners and they beat all the traditionals in the Crusaders region, it's like, well, then we've got to push that Crusaders region back. And then when you talk about strength of schedule and the teams that you're playing, you've got to bring out the fact that your competition is harder because of those 4 teams. And you've got to figure it out in some kind of way like that. And then all of that stuff makes sense. All of that stuff has to matter within the scale of ranking. That's why your record could look terrible from the 1A and the Super Rugby, but still be highly ranked. Because when you look at your wins and losses in terms of points, even though you've lost, pretty much 5 of your Super 8 losses, but they're all under 5 points, the record of wins and losses looks bad. But against the teams that are that good and the quality of teams that you're playing are top 10 teams or top 15 teams, top 25 teams. It's like when somebody else who's in another competition, like let's say someone like Scott's has like a massively impressive record, is like, yeah, but you don't play the teams that we play every single week in and week out, which is the bigger difference, And so that's where things come into it with me when I look at these rankings, and I will after this upset week, which has happened, is just like I'm looking at that stuff. I'm looking at, well, who did you play last week and the week before that? Then how does that look in terms of where you're going to fall and where you're going to go, where you're going to fall and how far you're going to go up. So if you're a supporter of a team that just won and that just won an upset, look at all your guys' scores and teams from before this win, and then go, well, Hirsch, we're sitting in this place. I think we should move up to this position. And I'll listen to it. I'll entertain those ideas because I don't know everything. I know a lot more than everybody else in a national, spectrum, but I'm open to hearing stuff. I'm open to the different ideas and the way things are looked at because I may be missing something. I'm not too proud to say stuff like that. It's like, no, give me another perspective. Give me another reason why. I'll listen to it, of course, and I may even take it on. And I have done in the past, especially with players and stuff like that. Some kid will just message me and say, hey, have you ever thought about this? This guy's this. I'll be like, oh, actually, you're right. I have ranked them wrong and I should probably move them up. But Kelston still remained at the top. That Hamilton boys game was so good. That Hamilton boys game was so good, and they're just lucky they got an interception. It would have been, I don't want to talk about grammar too much because it's not their fault. It's not. Whatever it is, they got to sort it out. But Hamilton looked good, and I didn't want the score to be that far away. But all honesty, should have put on 2 more tries. That's kind of what the game reflected more, that kind of thing. And Grammar just have to figure it out. They have to figure it out. Because it's not going to be a good year for them. And also with New Plymouth, going back to New Plymouth and Hamilton Boys, because Hamilton Boys got New Plymouth this coming week. And New Plymouth have to pick up their game because this is not going to be an easy one against Hamilton Boys here in Hamilton. And I was thinking about staying here in Hamilton, but I think I might come up to Auckland. Because, St. Peter's and Kelston Boys are playing, and so I think I might come out to that. If Massey are playing at home, I'll probably go watch Massey as well. Maybe stay out in that West. Maybe go look for an under 15 game in the morning, something like that. But that Kelston St. Peter's intrigues me, and that Hamilton Boys New Plymouth intrigues me too. And it's more about... intrigues me more about how much New Plymouth Boys can bounce back. I want to see what bounce back does. They don't have to win. They don't have to win because they're already underdogs. But if they can post up a good score, post up a big fight against Hamilton Boys, then to me it would restore that respect that I have for them already. It's not that I don't respect them right now. It's just that there's a little bit of a dent in their armor of what I thought New Plymouth Boys were. That's kind of how I'm thinking about it right now. And Kelston could actually lose this game coming up to St. Peter's too if they're not careful. And Kelston should be the number one team in the country. They have the right roster to be the number one team in the country. The only ones that are going to wreck it for themselves is Kelston Boys themselves. And they have to stay humble. They have to stay focused. Actually, do they have to stay humble? I don't know if you have to stay humble, but you have to give respect to St. Peter's as well as hold yourself accountable for who you guys are and what you guys are out there to accomplish. Because these boys are there for national titles, I feel. I feel Kelston is there for a national title. And there's this argument about it, and I always have this argument about 1A teams as well, is that 1A teams for the most part are not even looking at national titles. They're just looking to win the 1A. To me, it's just like, well, why? Wouldn't you rather just be a national title winner? Like, that's the main goal. Who cares if you win your own region? It's like, okay. Even if your region's that hard, it's like, okay. I would rather be the national winner. Like, that will be my focus. We'll just run through these guys and then get to nationals. Kelston, to me, is that focus where they're just going, yeah, we're going to win the 1A and then we're going to win nationals. And to me, Hamilton Boys are the only ones that can beat Kelston Boys, but I don't think that they can. At this point, I don't think that they can. At this point, I don't think Kelston are going to lose a game, but St. Peter's has that team already stacked up right there to take them out of this, take them out of their winning streak. And in all honesty, I wouldn't be surprised if St. Peter's do win this week. I don't think they will, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do. I'm still picking Kelston. But I wouldn't be surprised if AJ and Jerry just run amok and just take over. And remember, AJ Faleafanga is the best first five, the best player in the country they have right now. He is the best first five right now, and game management is his thing. And he knows exactly how to play against Kelston Boys, but does everybody else? That's the other story. Does everybody else know how to do that? St. Peter's have all got to be on it. And the thing is, with Kelston, is that you're not going to out-tough them. Everyone may have their pride and go, yeah, we're not scared of them. I'm not even saying that. You may not be scared of them, but out-tough them, you're not. But playing your game plan, playing it at speed, and playing it at, execution of your game plan is what beats Kelston. Not trying to be a tough guy. And any team that plays Kelston, don't try and be a tough guy towards them, and don't try and out-tough them. That's not how you're going to win. Because I know those guys don't care. I think Kelston boys are the toughest team in New Zealand. And they base a lot of their stuff off, especially their forward pack, off their toughness. Did you hear Zion right through that first game? The whole game? He doesn't care who you are. And he backs it up with his hits. He backs it up with his runs. And then you got Tony as well. Tony is a monster. And they're just breeding tough guys out there out west with that Kelston team. And they've always been like that. And that's not the way you beat Kelston teams. It's not by trying to bully them, because they're not bullied. They don't get bullied. But you can beat them through execution of your own game plan. That's how you beat them. Precision stuff. Let them play that bully boy game, and then just beat them with angles. Beat them with running. Beat them with cleaning out rucks properly. Don't try and clean them out and then fight and then push and then shove and blah, 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 whatever. I'm not saying, be a drop nuts and just let them push you around. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying don't try and be the guys that aggravate them, because they don't get aggravated. They don't. And every team that plays them, take that bully pride out of it and then win the game. Make it hard for them to recycle that ball. Make it hard for them to place the ball in tackles. Make it hard for them to get to the ground in tackles. Things like that. Make it hard for them to even put you down when you run that ball. Make them do the work. That's how you beat these guys. And it's not through toughness. And it's not by being a tough guy. Hastings boys almost did it at the beginning of this year just through precision of play. And then they ran out of it. But they had them. They had them for a while. And then Kelston just ran it off in the end. I was saying, well, they did what they needed to do. Kelston is just going to find that team that will come correct and will do that to them. Look at Mags. Mags almost did it to them last week. And I think if Kelston don't stay disciplined in their game plan, they're going to get a loss that they shouldn't get. This team is one of the first teams that I've looked at that I think, no, they shouldn't lose a game this year. And there's only been 3 teams in the past that I thought they shouldn't have lost a game. And most of those, like one of those teams, of course, was a team that St. Peter's beat. And that same year, St. Peter's went on to win a national title. Maybe it's going to repeat that now. I don't know if this is like a bit of a shout out to Kelston or St. Peter's, but to me, it's just like, well, Kelston's the favorite, but you never really count out St. Peter's in a way. Hamilton Boys is the other team. Hamilton Boys shouldn't lose a game. Hamilton Boys, if they lose a game, to me, the only team I see Hamilton Boys losing to, realistically, is Rotorua Boys. And Rotorua Boys has a team. To me, they have a team that's only weak in one area. Weak in one area and experienced in another, which are 2 different things. But they're the only team that I can see beating Hamilton Boys this year would probably be a Rotorua matchup. And remember, like, sometimes it's not about the matchup in terms of playing them Super 8. It's more about the Chiefs region games that I think come towards the end of the year. I think it is, if it's the same. But yeah, I've got to check on that. But that's the only thing that, I kind of expect Kelston and Hamilton boys to be in that final come the end of the year. And those are probably the only upsets that I see. Is probably those ones. And I know a lot of you guys from Kings are probably pretty annoyed and angry that I'm saying this, but I think St. Peter's is the only one that I can see as a team beating them. Kings need to have Chicago for them to beat Kelston boys. That's what I think. And I mean, I think I've been pretty vocal about this, but if Kings don't have Chicago, Francis, and Shea, all three of them on the field, to me, I don't see them going that far. They're like a superstar team when they have all three. Then they're not if one of them is missing. And so it's going to be a hard one for them, but they just have to keep everybody healthy. They have to keep those three healthy. If you want to talk about big three, that's the big three right there. I think King's College is big three dependent, and that's Shea, Francis, and Chicago. And they need all three of them. It's not like, I mean, yeah, actually it is. It's kind of like having Kevin Durant, Kyrie, and Harden. Like, if you only have two of them, you can only go so far with that. King's College is the same. You only have two of them, you can only go so far. Right now it's kind of alright, but once Chicago gets back, you got to hope that they carry it through. If Chicago comes back and those three stay, to me it's going to be a Kings and Kelston final. But if one of them are gone, to me it should be a St. Peter's Kelston final. Kelston's always going to be there. It's either going to be one of those two. And the other teams have to pick themselves up because Mags is coming. Sacred have lost. Oh, that was the other game. That's the other game that I was talking about. That's the other game that I was thinking about going to, right? Is Grammar and Sacred Heart play this weekend too. I might go to that game. Because both of them are on losses. Both of them have lost twice. The next one that gets one more loss, you pretty much count yourself out of it. Getting 3 losses in the 1A is a big deal. In the 1A, it's a big deal. And you don't want 3 losses in a row. And having Sacred Heart and Auckland Grammar having 2 losses in the first 2 rounds is pretty unheard of in a way. So, I don't know. I'm going to decide whether I want to go to... Yeah, if I want to go to Kings... if I want to go to Kelston St. Peter's or Sacred Heart Auckland Grammar. Obviously, the Kelston St. Peter's because that's the number 1 and number 3 in the country playing. But then on the other end of it, you're just like, well, these two are desperate. These guys are playing off desperation right now because they both have to win this game. You have to win this game. If you lose it, you might as well count your season out. And the ones that's more desperate, Auckland Grammar, are more desperate. They are more desperate to win this because they've lost. They've lost New Plymouth. I don't want to keep talking about it because I'm not trying to put you guys down. But you've lost New Plymouth, Hamilton boys, and then you've lost the St. Kitts and what was your first game? Oh, sorry, the one that I was at, St. Peter's. You've had that losing streak of Super 8 and 1A. Which is harsh. And the way that they lost was harsh. Harsh. But it's going to be a good week. Send me through your questions. I've got to be more diligent in the way that I put out this content because there is stuff that I want to talk to. There are videos that I want to do for people with short attention spans. And so I'll put up some quick hitters if you want to make it easy, just ask me questions and I'll just answer your question as honest as possible. But here's the thing, and I tell kids this all the time: don't ask me for my honest opinion if you don't want to hear what the honest opinion is. All right? Because if you ask me for the honesty and I hurt your feelings, it's your fault. I try and do as much positive stuff as possible when I make these videos. But if you're gonna hit me up and you're gonna DM me and then you're going to say, hey, tell me, what can I do? What am I doing bad? I will ask you back. The first question is what I'm going to ask you is like, well, do you really want the real answer? Do you want the honest answer? Because I'll give you the honest answer. And everyone says yes, and they take it, the way that they want to take it. No one's ever gotten angry, but you just take it the way I want to take it, and I'll just tell you the honest answer. So if you want to make this short attention span video questions, if you want, hit me up, ask me a question and I'll answer it honestly, and then I'll just put out maybe 5. I'll put out 5 short attention span videos for you guys that don't know how to hold your attention is just a squirrel mode of attention. Squirrel mode means you see things and you just react and you've lost them. I know there's a lot of you in class. My best friend's like that too. His attention span's terrible. But yeah, hope everyone had a good weekend, and all your parents are back at work come tomorrow morning. Everyone's getting back safe. Everybody please drive safe from wherever you're coming back. I've just come back from Tauranga because my daughter was dancing for the Red Studio, and I have to support her because I love my daughter so much, but those things annoy me. But I do it because my daughter, and I love her so much, even though those dancing things annoy the hell out of me. But, yeah, hit me up. New rankings will come later on today. And then also the top 60 year 11 rankings will be up too Wednesday. All right? Herschel, peace.